So I guess it's time we can go ahead and get started. Thank y'all for coming. Trent, thank you for us working together on this. So, as I mentioned a while ago, give me another show of hands. How many people really feel like they've got a problem with root knot nematode? I'm not talking cyst nematode or any of the corn ones, the sting, the lance. The root knot is truly my nemesis. So, a little bit about me. Well, I'm from Augusta, Arkansas, about 80 miles west of here. Corn, soybeans, rice, a little bit of wheat. Semi-retired cotton farmer. I'll eventually get back in it, but I just hadn't done it yet. But when we raised cotton, and I was at one time 100% cotton, we had the Timic, and we used that, and that kind of kept these things in check. Then we went through some seed treatments in cotton. It probably wasn't doing the job that the Timic was doing on these nematodes. So then we got out of cotton and just strictly a corn bean rotation, and those things have taken off. So again, like I said a while ago, I didn't put a lot of preparation into this because I thought we might get some discussion on methods y'all have been using or trying to control these things. So the threshold according to the University of Arkansas is 60 per 100 cubic centimeters. And I did learn one thing. I was talking to Travis Foskey, and I said, is that the same as a pint? And he said, no. 473 cubic centimeters equals 1 pint. So about a fifth of a pint, 60 and a fifth of a pint is what's considered a threshold. On my farm, in bad spots, I'm running 3,000 plus. So that's 50 times the threshold. And I'm here to tell you, and we'll talk about it in a minute, there's no seed treatment, there's no resistant variety. At those kind of levels, those extreme levels, it'll walk right through them. I've tried it all. I've got one combination that worked better than anything last year, so I'll share that with you. So seed treatments, you got chemical and biological. Again, I think with moderate levels, threshold or slightly above, there is some benefit there. And there's probably some benefit even at the high levels, but you're just overwhelmed. So you get to zero on yield real quick and a lot of dead plants. Resistant varieties, I've got some slides on that. It's a 1 to 9 scale typically. Moderate resistant is about a 7. That's proven nothing to me. I mean, it just doesn't hold up. It might in lighter pressure, but not at the higher levels. I'd say when I do, we did some last fall. We did some nematode sampling. 700 to 800 per 100 cubic centimeters is pretty common. So that's 10 to 12x threshold. We'll talk about crop rotation. Corn's a host crop. Grain sorghum for years was supposedly not a host crop, but Travis and his grad student, Delilah or whatever her name is, she did some study and she proved that grain sorghum is in fact a host crop. Peanuts is about, and cotton, tomatoes, I got some notes on this. Cotton and tomatoes, of course, are host crops. Peanuts are a non-host crop. So if you're in the peanut business, you might rotate a few 100 acres of peanuts around to truly get rid of them. Now, eventually they'll probably come back, but they are a non-host crop, and that will solve the problem.
Can you get rid of them in a year with a peanut crop?
I think so. I think peanut crop pretty much takes them out. Now, rice, which that's a different issue. You're talking about saturated soils, they go down. They found them as deep as 12 feet. So they just migrate down and go dormant, or hibernate, whatever they do. And then, when the conditions are right, they come back up. Cover crops, I know absolutely nothing about cover crops for the most part. Any of y'all use cover crops? Come on, cover crops are everywhere. No one here uses any kind of cover crops?
We use it in cotton, but, zero right.
Yeah. So I just actually saw on Delta Farm Press one of the most recent issues. Travis had done some work on some cover crops, and the black hulled oats gave me the best results. I don't know what black hulled oat is, but I thought I'd put it in there. And then I've heard that there's some winter crops, some mustards that might give you some control. Then there's the soil fumigants. I've used Telon before, and I'll have some pictures and talk about that for a minute. It is expensive, and it is a hassle and takes some specialized equipment. K-Pam and Vapam, anybody familiar? It's high rates. It's what, 20, 30 gallons, 50 gallons an acre. I checked into it, and it's cheaper than the Telon, and but they said, you got to buy it by the truckload. And I said, like a trailer truckload? They said, yeah. I said, well, I don't need that much. He said, yeah, you do. A truckload will only do about 160 acres. So then you're looking to have to essentially fertigate it through a pivot system or something to get that kind of volume out to fumigate the soil. These last two are not labeled for soybeans. I'm not standing up here and saying that it is acceptable on soybeans. The Timic, the carbamate, which now is AgLogic 15G, I think. Of course, on cotton that would be fine, but with the soybean planters that I have, we don't have hopper boxes anymore. And as far as I know, there's no bulk delivery system on a per row basis for any of that stuff. But that is effective, and it's quite dangerous. That's why they pulled it off the market for a while. And then foliar, Vidate, that does have some systemic activity. That's that organic. What is that? Is that a carbamate also?
I think so.
Yeah. So it will translocate and make its way down the roots and provide some control. That's what they look like. They penetrate the root. Females do 20, 30 days, and they lay several hundred eggs over the course of another week, and the life cycle is about 25 days. So that begins a cycle, and they just build and build and build. And that's what you get, all those galls on your roots. Those are, I guess, where the egg masses are, and they hatch out, and they just destroy the integrity of the root system, so the plant can't take it up, and the fertility or the moisture. So I've got some pictures. So this particular field, I don't know what those beans were making there. 80 bushels, maybe 90. Good beans. But if you look up there in that corner, you start to see it's grass is what it is. It's crabgrass. And that crabgrass is indicative of root knots. If we could figure out what's in the crabgrass and breed it over to a soybean or any other crop, root knots wouldn't be a problem. So the way these things spread, they start in an area and they feed there and they get bigger and bigger and bigger until you start getting spots like that out in the field. And I'm telling you right now, that's a 0. So that's the same field. So, we're in excellent beans, and they get worse and worse and worse. You start seeing spots like that. Of course, they're shorter. So I would say they're high levels in here. And usually the highest levels are in the perimeter. Because think about it, they've already fed on this. They don't have anything to eat, so they're not going to be many there. They're going to be in this area and moving outwardly in that circular direction. So there's a picture of that crabgrass from another angle. So I would say that spot, they overwhelmed those soybeans early, killed them, and then the crabgrass took over. I mean, you can't even drive a combine through that really, and it's certainly a 0. So have a whole hillside of that. And what I've seen is the worst areas aren't on top of the hills. They're on the sides at the same elevation across the whole field. I talked to Dr. Foskey about it. He said, yeah, he's seen that too. He thought on those real sandy hills, there's just not enough moisture there. So they drop down the hill where there's a little more moisture so they can move and feed. So that, I accepted that as a good explanation as why I don't see them on the tip top of the sand hills. So in all this, I use raw combine data because it's more linear and it's easier to see. So that first picture I showed you, they were making 80 or 90 bushels, that was taken down in here. That second picture where the the crabgrass and the thinner beans was taken right here. So that's what you see. Down here, that field, averaged just a little over 50 bushels. So it's pretty depressing when down in here you're making 60, 70, 80 plus, then you hit these spots with zeros, and it just kills you. So, so I talked about rotation a little bit, or I mentioned it. So I went back and I said, well, I wonder if I've got any yield data or harvest data to show that. So I'm going to show you the 2019 soybean harvest, but I thought I'd put up the 2018 corn harvest. That's a pretty good cornfield. Now the red, we didn't get any rain on this particular farm in 18, so the red is a lot lower, so it shows up as in red on the corner. So just forget about that. I'm looking at the two irrigated circles. That's 250, 75 bushel corn. And I don't really see any patterns as far as nematode damage. But then,
You're not seeing any stubby root nematode?
no, Tommy, I don't. When I sample those, it'll come back occasionally. There'll be a few, but it's root knot what the problem is.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
When do you sample for your corn nematodes?
Well, I didn't on this.
Okay.
As far as sampling, y'all know how to sample. You know, I've been doing it wrong because I always go to the hot spot just to confirm what I already know, and that's where I get those high numbers. I got Arkansas had a free nematode sampling. It used to be about $25 or $30 a sample, but now someone's sponsoring it for free. Extension agent came out. He did it right. He goes around an affected area, gets some in the worst spots, the moderate spots, and kind of makes a pattern around the affected area. Those numbers typically on my farm come back around 700 or 800. But if you just go stick it right in the worst spots, that's where you get those 3,000. So that, and you know, when you take it, they say handle it like a gallon of milk. You don't want to send them off where they're sitting in a lab over the weekend when no one's there. Send it off first of the week, earlier in the week, so they'll get them. You don't want to get them too hot because they're a living organism, they'll die. And then they can't give you an accurate number. So again, this corn, I'm not even going by my notes, but the seed on this was just treated with a high rate seed treatment. I think there's some benefit. Even though corn's a host crop, they don't seem, it's not as susceptible. So I think it pays to use a high rated seed treatment, whether it's the Pioneer, the Poncho Votivo 1250, or any of the other ones. Some of them at the 500 level rate of fungicide, they'll still kick in a full rate of nematicide. So that's just going to depend on who you're getting your seed from. But this is just my opinion by looking at these slides. If you've got root knot nematodes, corn, you can probably get by with just a seed treatment. I know, Tommy, maybe we can talk about this in a minute. Y'all are using a lot of counter.
Yes, sir.
And satisfied with that?
Absolutely. Seed treatment did me no good on stubby root nematode.
Yeah, stubby root. I'm talking root knot. So that brings up a question I've had, and Tucker, maybe you can answer it. Counter never was considered a nematicide back in the day because we always had Timic in cotton. And now that that's not available, counter is somewhat effective, or it's good enough, or it's one of the best choices we have if you can apply it with a hopper box. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't want to sound too hard on the counter, but years ago it was not really considered an nematicide. But it's one of the better tools we have right now. So there's corn, there's beans. And those curves out there are not irrigation circles. If you remember, those circles are up here. There's two pivots out there. That is nothing but root knot nematodes. And I was on the combine. The guys were finishing up with corn, and that field was ready, so I jumped on the combine. So that's one combine. I ran it. guarantee you that the data is as good as it can get. I was calibrated, and you talk about depressing. Man, I started down in here, going across the field, and pretty satisfied with the yield, 70 plus. And I hit some of these spots. Like, what the hell is that? And then I started looking across the field, and everywhere those beans were off color a little bit. They didn't look like they were affected. I guess they got in them late. The height was fine, but there's just no fruit there, no beans. So that's when I called the extension agent. He came out, and we sampled around here, and yeah, they were 700 or 800. So I didn't think I had a problem out there. That's depressing about this. I cost myself about $200 an acre by not doing something more defensive. Now this seed did have Nematodes, which is no longer, it's off the market again. But this was a moderately resistant bean with Nematodes, and that's why I say I don't think it helped. It may help a little bit, but look at that. It didn't. I mean, there's that hurt me probably close to 30 bushel average per acre, and that's a 300 acre field, so that's a lot. Close to 10,000
What
bushels.
variety was it?
That was a 4.9. A lot of companies have it, and it was marketed as moderately resistant. It was a 7. That's why I'm going back to that 1 to 9 scale. That's not good enough. So the problem with indeterminate beans, there's just not a lot of proven. I know Pioneer's got one they're proud of. It's got the same gene or something in it, and so I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but I was told several years ago it's just so hard in a Group 4 indeterminate to get consistent root knot results. So some of them are better than others, but this one at a 7, rated moderately resistant, did not do much to me. But I mean, that says it all right there. Didn't think I had a problem in corn in 18, and then in 19 end up with something like that. Makes me sick. All right, so this is what I did this year. This field is had a problem. So I thought, well, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try something different. It's going to be a little more trouble. But so in 17, you can see where all the red, that's nothing but nematodes on this north end. This down here, that was a yield contest. This field right in there made over 100 bushels of beans go for the green. But the north end of this field completely wiped out. So it was in corn last year. I didn't need to put that data up, didn't mean anything. But in 19, I planted this southern 2/3 or 3/4 of fields in a 4.9, that same one, Matt, that was moderately resistant. Treat it with Nematodes. And then on this north end, where they were so bad, I planted a 5.6, which had a score of a 9 that showed completely resistant. A little more trouble. There were still some spots that it, still made 0, but for the most part, the lighter orange and yellow, they were making 45 bushels or so. So we had a big area at 17 that, a lot of zeros out there, and then we split it up, and we averaged, around 45 bushels. So, long story short, trying this or going this route, even though it's more trouble, statistically it was 17 bushels higher than it would have been if I had planted the whole field in this 4.9 more susceptible variety. So, can I do that on every field? I guess, but that's going to be a lot of trouble bouncing around. That was planted on May the 17th, I think. So, I guess I was pleased with that. I didn't have to do anything too crazy to get those results. So I mentioned some of the soil fumigants to tell on. The rate for cotton is 3 to 6 gallons. For soybeans is actually 6 gallons. But since it cost, I think the last I bought was 21 gallons, $21 a gallon. A few years ago I bought some for 19. Y'all may get a better deal than I can, but you talk about a pain. Does anyone do that? Anybody fool with tell-on? I keep going to Tucker, he's kinda nodding his head.
We've done it in cotton, just testing, but like you said, it's terribly expensive.
Yeah, I mean, this is a strip till rig I got, so that thing's not cheap. And then we can also put that fertilizer, deep band fertilizer with it. And that tractor's not cheap to pull that thing, cause it's 16 rows and it got 16 subsoiler shanks. So with the tell-on, you gotta get at least 14 inches in the ground and seal it back up. And when it hits moisture, you're pushing it with, so that propane tank is where the actual tell-on is. And that's actually, that cylinder there is actually nitrogen. So you can't get water on the tell-on because something bad happened. So we gotta use pressurized nitrogen gas to push the tell-on out the applicator at 14 inches deep, sealed up, and then you can't plant for 2 weeks because it will destroy the germ of the seed. Kills everything. Kill you too, though it's dangerous. But it works. I mean, it's a fumigant. It kills everything. Good. It kills your good microbiology too, but they say it recovers quicker. And I just have a few pictures here. I gotta stand in front of the camera. Of the way that works, that's a road unit. It comes out down here, and then these blades, of course, seal it up. So,
Do you use anhydrous for your corn? Is that a possibility that could, if you used anhydrous?
I've heard that will provide some control. Just the way anhydrous, whatever it does, I don't know if it burns them out, takes the oxygen out, it does something. I've heard that will provide some control. I've actually heard tillage will provide some control because it just breaks up their habitat and cycle. So seed treatments, lower levels, right at threshold, probably do some good. Resistant varieties, I think you know my opinion there, the 1 to 9. If it's not a 9, don't think you're going to get much out of it. I said something about the indeterminate varieties. When you get into the group 5s, 6s, and 7s, they have true resistance. But most of that is coming from the southeast coast, Georgia, South Carolina, where they do have problems with them, but they raise those full season determinate beans down there in a lot of cases. Crop rotations, corn, sorghum, peanut provide. We'll take them out 1 year, I think, Matt. You're not raising any peanuts, are you? Are you?
This will be my first year.
Okay,
That's the reason why.
Yeah.
I've got some fields just like you're talking about. You have zeros, we found them real quick like.
It's not hard.
We're taking that Pioneer seed, which is to me the best one out there. If you're going
They've got some gene isolated. They're breeding back into several.
And then we'll add a Victor, some kind of nematicide to that.
Yeah.
1 year we didn't do that, and that variety had nematodes in it, so trying a couple of different.
There's something to all this, but when you have these extreme levels, it's just hard to overcome.
Vellum's not labeled in for soybean.
I don't think so.
Harry, on the soil fumigants, what's the cost of the vape pen? that you
It's a
said-
little cheaper, Tommy.
That you said would take truckloads to do it?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So-
I'm just, I sell pivots and everything, but there's not a problem to, what I want to ask you is, have you researched enough to know if you can plant your crop and then start applying that as, after the crop emerges and start continuing? or
I don't
that's
think
all
so,
be done
because-
Before it's planted?
Because the way it works, it fumigates the soil, it kills everything in there. All your biology that's working for you that you need. The tell on, I didn't say it, you get better results if you put it out in the fall.
So in other words, if you had I'm just trying to figure out something, because I could see on my farm how I could make that work. Buy you a injector, and then in the fall, when you get your crop harvested, just make you a couple circles and apply that.
Yeah.
Because the nematodes do come back at harvest. I mean, you might, we used Elevo, and I thought, man, I've got a good crop. We was planting enlist soybeans, and the enlist soybeans, then about 5 weeks before harvest, I started seeing the yellow telltale
Yep.
signs, and then we were sick. And my slides are exactly like yours, but I was just thinking, if a guy could go back here and apply something with a pivot that would work and be less expensive, the volume's really not a problem. 'cause
Not if you're fertigating.
If you fertigate it, that's right.
Where was I?
But I don't know the cost.
I'd like to see someone, it's cheaper than Telon. You know, if the Telon, I'm kind of going from memory. If the Telon's gonna cost you at least $60 an acre, I think the Vapam, K-Pam was something in the $30 range. But it wasn't quite as effective.
I'm
You
paying
know, the
$15
Telon is a 10. Like I said, it's gonna kill them, it's gonna kill you, it's gonna kill everything. But the K-Pam, Vapam, it's more of a 7 or 8 as far as
I wonder if
on
it's
the scale.
labeled to even put out through irrigation.
It is, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So again, I'm gonna repeat myself. These last two, the Timic or the Ag Logic and the Vidate, is not labeled for soybeans or corn. It's labeled for cotton, so. If you got a problem with them in cotton and you can put it out, go ahead. So, I think that's all I had. Anything else?